Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. So first of all, welcome. It's Wednesday, November 25th. Not a day we normally broadcast. This is a fourth Wednesday. Normally we only do the first and the third. But my social media maven, who is they who must be obeyed, reminded me I should probably do a holiday greeting and thank everyone. And then I was also looking at the COVID numbers and kind of noticed some interesting things coming out. So I'm going to do a two-part sort of unscheduled, impromptu. It's going to be short. It's not going to be a full episode. But what I wanted to do is sort of, I know people are celebrating different ways. Some celebrate Thanksgiving tomorrow. Some, have a remembrance on the day of mourning. In whatever way that you choose to, either celebrate or remember tomorrow, best wishes from the InfoMullet, from Bonky, emotional support Donkey, and myself, the chief mulleteer. As we go into the holiday season, we have Hanukkah, we have Christmas, we have all sorts of holidays coming up. On all of these things, however you choose to celebrate them, I want you to know we appreciate what you do and wish you a good holiday season. And just be safe, because what I'm seeing here is, the rush title of this could have been the week we crested wave 2. And what I wanted to show is kind of, again, a lot of people on my feed are familiar with this. They get the charts, they understand it. But I wanted to go through and kind of show how it is that, if this was not Thanksgiving week heading into the December holiday season, we'd probably have crested wave 2. And that wouldn't be great because there's still a lot of bad news, and I'll go over that in a bit. But we would have been cresting wave 2 this week, next week, and wave 2 would have been declining. And I think what's now going to happen is it's going to escalate, and I can show you why in a bit. First, a couple shout outs again to everyone here: Jennifer, Stephen, Jules, Lucas, Derek, Jeremy, Mike. Thanks everyone for joining in. Again, if you're just joining now, this is an unscheduled one, but let me share real quick. You've seen this chart before, and I want to go through, when I say it's cresting, so we see these charts, and then we'll get into a little behind the scenes of how you look at this when you're a system dynamicist. But this is the positivity rate, and we've shown it before. It has the number of daily tests. It has the red bar in positivity. The higher your positivity rate, the less you're catching of the pandemic. So you want to be underneath 5%. That's this line right here, ideally under 2 or 3. And you can see this double wave pattern. This is wave 1. Wave 1.5 comes in here over the summer, and then wave 2. And you can actually begin to see that positivity rate has turned and is beginning to go down. Now, that in itself does not mean you've crested wave 2. This is just the positive rate. There's a lot of things, we've been increasing the number of tests by a couple 100,000. Maybe we're getting closer to finding the total. You can see, again, as a time delay, this is not just positive tests with asymptomatic people, no consequences. This chart shows the number of positive tests and hospitalizations. And this is, you can see here again, wave 1, wave 2, and then it really spikes into, wave 1.5, and then it really spikes into wave 2. If you focus up here at the top, you begin to see it's actually beginning to climb. These are absolute positive tests, but it's still a very high number. We're looking at and this is a 7-day moving average. We're about 170,000 right now. But the hospital rate is continuing to climb, and that's that delay effect. People don't go in the hospital the day they get infected. It takes 7 to 14 days for symptoms to show up, another 5 to 7 days after that for you go into the hospital. So you're looking at, and then ultimately it can be up to another 5 to 14 days after that if you end up dying from it. So there's time delays on all of these things, and you can see that time delay in the left to right here as we go from the high. So this hospital rate here, think of this as reflecting where we were at the beginning of November. So the hospitalization rate, which is already the highest we've ever had at about 85,000, that's actually only reflecting a case rate of maybe 80 to 100,000, this 7-day moving average. All of this space up here, that's not really in, it's in a little bit, but there's a lot more of this that's going to transfer down to the hospital. So even though the case test rate is cresting, that doesn't mean the hospital rate's going to crest until a delay. And that translates into the death rate, which is really disappointing. I've done this before. These are the daily deaths and then a 7-day moving average with a couple of the outliers here marked. And I want to point out that we hit 2,500 only a few times during the worst of wave one, when the super spreader event was ravaging New York City, East New Jersey. That's when we hit over 2,000. We had a couple days that were over 2,500, almost half a month that was, for the most part, over 2,000 on our moving average. And then it dropped again. And we had this lull. Wave 1.5 comes up, a trough that is doesn't get back down to the bottom. I remember, trough is higher than previous trough. And then all of a sudden it begins climbing back up. And you can really see this climb. This death rate reflects those cases that were being tested positive at the beginning of November, maybe the second week in November, right? Maybe this is the 7th or something like that, the 14th. This isn't today's numbers, right? The death rates are lagging. So even if we stopped having COVID infections tomorrow, this death rate would continue to likely climb. And yesterday, it's been at 1,800 and 1,900. And last week on the Ask Me Anything, I warned that we'd probably pop over 2,000 Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday, and here it was yesterday, Wednesday. We hit 2,200 deaths in a day, and I checked. I didn't find that it was any records dumped, that one state kind of just put a bunch of information out there, and that's what caused it. And so now I have a real fear that we're going back to these wave one conditions. And instead of being a super spreader event where it's concentrated in New York City and East New Jersey and a couple other places, it's spread over the entire country. So it's much more diverse in a lot of, and it's these deaths are accumulating in a lot of places. So it's not just containing it in one place. We've got a national crisis right now, and my fear is we're going to have a bunch of days of these over 2,000 amounts. And I didn't think I'd ever bring up this chart again, but for those of you who followed the info mullet, I first talked about COVID-19 in January when China did its lockdown, and everyone's eyes started going, this is, they just locked down 65 million people. This is very serious. In early March, I made a series of forecasts of how bad this could possibly be from a death total to try and correct our mental model and sort of estimate where we would end up being. And that, I'll be honest, that forecast was not intended for the rest of the year, because I didn't fathom that we would still be struggling with as a nation to respond to this for the rest of the year as badly we have. But that chart, I've actually cleaned it up a little bit in that this chart now has a bunch of horizontal lines that are the different forecasts. The brown ones come from the University of Washington IMHE estimates at the time they were in March. So these were fixed point in time. That's an estimate that changes every 2 weeks, but I grabbed them at the time, and that's the low, middle, and high death estimate that they were estimating at for wave one. The blue ones here are the infomullet estimates that I put in that March. Again, this was a mental model. I did some back of the math numbers, and I said, look, if it's much less than we're seeing in China, this was the low end. This was case number one, very low. Case number two, case number, the solid line here is case number 2 or 3. This was the average, and this is about where we ended after wave one. But I had two worst case scenarios here: infomullet case number 4 and 5, and 5 high and low, excuse me. And this is 260,000, 270,000. We are right now sitting at 259,000, and at 2,000 deaths a day, we're going to pass this maybe before December even starts. So already my second worst case scenario. Now, granted, at the time, I was not thinking we'd have multiple waves as bad, because I kind of thought we'd get our act together after getting crushed for that first 6 weeks and we'd take it seriously, but we didn't take it seriously. And now we're on a clip to pass the second worst estimate. We probably won't get up to over 400,000, but if you're talking 1,000 to 2,000 deaths a day, we may easily add between 60 and 80,000 more deaths in December. And it's not inconceivable. Remember, we are still catching up on the hospitalization and death rate. So it's possible we may see 3,000 deaths a day, and then it'd be somewhere closer to 60 to 110,000. So it's not inconceivable we're going to be way up here by the end of the year. And COVID-19 is already the third leading cause of death in the country, even though it doesn't have a full year's worth of running. It's only been running really since mid-March, when it really took off in a couple cities. It's already the third leading cause of, or the third, and it's behind heart disease and, you know, things like that. But it's ahead of everything else so far. And what I wanted to show is, first of all, see if there's any questions. And for those who are joining, this is an unscheduled one. Part of what I'm trying to do with this is give this warning. Tomorrow, your plans may already be set. I'm not going to tell you under no circumstances go out, but for God's sake, you know, if you aren't going to somewhere that they haven't been quarantining in place, they aren't practicing the good social distance, I mean, really consider this, because what we're doing, this could have been the week where we crested the wave and it began to decline. That everything I just said is already baked in. We've already lost all those people. We're already going to pass 270,000 deaths, but we could have contained it. This could have been the week that we crested it, but because Thanksgiving week is here, and then we go into, you know, shopping and travel for holidays, and then all the December holidays are coming up and vacation. We could be running this through easily January or February, where the crest that could have been this week won't show up until January or February. And that's my big fear. And why I'm doing this warning today. So Lucas here is commenting, Mulleteer is, I expect we will see temporarily lower numbers in the next few days, but I think that'll be an artifact. Lucas, I think you're right. And I'll show here in the next segment how I, as a system dynamicist, really start to pull apart like these behavior graphs. And it may get a little technical, but I want to show how you pull it apart and can see whether it's an artifact or not, and look at that. And Mike saying one thing from my observation is people are becoming way more relaxed with masks and such in public, even though the numbers are still pretty high. We are seeing pressure on local hospitals around here. It's called pandemic fatigue. It's a known phenomena. People get tired of doing it, even if they have been doing it. We have a lot of people who shouldn't be tired because they haven't been doing it, but fatigue definitely sets in. Yeah. Lucas is talking here. The temporary artifact is that laboratories may be downstaffed for the holiday, and that will affect the case and numbers that get reported. So this may be like a weekend effect. When you look at these charts, you'll see a weekend effect that's usually Saturday, Sunday, Monday are lower numbers than any other. I may do a histogram just to show this effect more clearly on the next one. But definitely there is a weekend and holiday effect. When labs are closed, less cases are tested positive. That means there's less positive counts and also less deaths confirmed, because a lot of states require a positive count for deaths. What I wanted to do is show here we go. So let's go here. All right. Here is, this is how I would pull the data. So this is the same data you just saw. This is the Our World in Data. Every once in a while you can pull up any country. It's got a lot of little bells and whistles you can play with. It's fine. You can look at confirmed cases. You can look at cumulative. So let's treat this as a system dynamicist. Let's say you're looking at this. Well, as a system dynamicist, the first thing you look at is cumulative, and you see it's going up. But this doesn't tell you much other than we have a lot, and you can kind of make some eyeballs on the steepness of this curve. You can kind of, well, okay, it's definitely getting steep more recently. There are a couple areas where it's flattening out, but it's kind of hard to see that wave pattern. So what you want to see is we go to a 7-day rolling average, and this gives us a lot clearer now. These are the new cases per day over a 7-day average, and people, and again, this is these are absolute numbers, right? So you're seeing these wave patterns. You might want to look at this per million, which is, if you're going to compare this to other countries, notice it doesn't change the wave pattern when I go from absolute to per million. It just, it is easier to compare to other countries. And you have confirmed deaths, right? Here you have the really sharp, very similar to the last chart I showed, right? This is all stuff I just showed you. You have the spike in the super spreader event. You have this is the New Jersey releases that data. So this is sort of an artificial bump. Then you have the wave 1.5, the trough, and the wave 2. Well, how do we know that this is, you know, how would you dig deeper if you were going to compare on this and see how we were doing? Well, one of the reasons I like this is it has a weekly change and biweekly change. And I wouldn't look at the weekly change because the data is going to be very noisy. But you look at so let's go to confirmed cases and look at the biweekly change, right? Well, all of a sudden, you can't see much, right? This is the thing with people got to understand with charts. This scale is dominated by the super spreader event in wave 1, and you're talking about 1,000% changes. And but don't mistake this as flat down here. I'm going to show you a neat trick you can do with these scaling things. We do it all the time in our simulations, but don't mistake yourself that down here is flat, because look at this. You have between 0 and 1,000% change down here. Let's use this time slider and slide it up to the beginning of wave 2. Let's artificially say, well, let's go a month before. Let's say wave 2 begins sometime in October. Let's pick September. And as we scale it over, watch what happens to this flat line. You begin to get changes in behavior. See, all of a sudden, we're only here in April now because we've moved out of the super spreader. You can really see that first, this is the wave 1.5 has now emerged, and this is all within 100% change. So you get a lot more detail. Then you slide it over to the right, and you start getting, let's just move it over to September, right? So you can see here, you can see the trough down in August. So we'll say September, give it a month. And now you can see, we're really zoomed in on wave 1.2. And what this is showing is the rate of change over a 2-week rolling average in confirmed new cases. This is what tells you whether that thing you eyeballed and said, well, it kind of looked like it's flattening out. This will tell you, because as the rate of change hits that crest, it begins declining. Think of this like acceleration. This is a chart like a car accelerating. As it's going up, the car is accelerating faster and faster. It's not speed, it's acceleration. As it goes down, that means the car is decelerating. So even though its speed is still high, it's decelerating, and that's how you can tell when a wave is crested, because you can see here that we have gone from, now this doesn't mean, this is like a car that went up to 90 miles an hour and is decelerating down to 85 miles an hour. This is still a really fast car, but it tells me that this was this beginning of this cresting moving in, and it's over, this is over 2 weeks, and you can look at this data, it goes back about 15 days. So we were cresting this, about, you know, we're really in the cresting thing. And you can do the same thing for confirmed deaths. You can look at cumulative, right? Doesn't show you much. When you look at cumulative over time, it's just a line. If you look at 7-day rolling average, you get that wave pattern. If you look at biweekly change, again, it's dominated in the scale from an earlier event. But don't let this flat line confuse you. Change the time axis and your scale will adjust. And all of a sudden you get that good detail coming out. Now you can move it forward to September, where we know, there we go. By the way, if this is like the John King of COVID-19, maybe one day I can get on CNN with the equivalent of the touchscreen and do this like John King does all the election math. But this is how we really dig in. So this is, again, the rate of change. And you can see it's choppy here. It's not as smooth as confirmed deaths, but you can definitely see it's a little bit of flattening here. Now remember, deaths are delayed after cases. So this may continue to rise up, and that crest we saw in cases, you know, the confirmed cases crest, where we clearly see it going down, we switch to confirmed deaths, that's still a couple weeks out, right? That's not going to show up until a couple weeks out. But you can already see here we're getting a little bit of crest. Maybe this is an artifice, you know, as Lucas mentioned with labs. But this is what's telling me is that we could have perhaps crested this. This one right here, this is the real indicator that, and it wouldn't have cleared out hospitals right away. It still would have been very dangerous, but it means we would be on the downward slope of wave 2. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be there anymore. So let me check to see if there's any questions on this so far. Eileen, Ms. Falconberry says, my job forces all of its employees to work on Thanksgiving. I'm very worried about what's going to happen at Rice Krispies tomorrow. Yeah, so Thanksgiving Day is one of the biggest restaurant days in America. Restaurants are one of the worst places to be because your mask's down, you're eating, and you're talking because you're seeing people. This is why this is a dangerous event, because Thanksgiving, literally the definition of Thanksgiving from a system dynamic standpoint is take people from different areas, drive them together in a common place, stick them in a room together, and have them eat something, right? From a pandemic standpoint, that means no masks. From a social standpoint, you're probably getting into arguments with family and yelling and shouting about politics, so there's voice escalation. You're bringing people from different areas together. The positive rate can combine. It's just a nightmare scenario. Ms. Falconberry, as much as you can, wear a mask tomorrow. I mean, that's, and stay away from the stinkers. Yeah, and Mike says there's so many people who don't believe this is a big deal. I've seen on my feed in the last 2 weeks, I've seen many people get tested. I've seen several people who have had loved ones or friends that have passed, and I know at least one person on my feed has passed. So as social media sort of diffuses this message, it's going to become a more apparent. But the question is how much. There are some people who are in North Dakota are sick. They're not even taking this real. Yeah, 400 guests in a tiny restaurant. That's a super spreader event waiting to happen, Miss Falconberry. Anya is asking, how has the case been with this flu season? It is still fairly early. Anya, I'm keeping a very close eye on that. The challenge there is that the CDC data itself is lagged by a few weeks, and this is right at the beginning period of when we'd start seeing the cases. With that caveat in mind, it's been a light flu season. It hasn't been as heavy yet, but that doesn't really tell us much because the peak of the flu season can, and I've done this on a previous, it can be December, January, February, March it gets less. April, there's really no peak. That's one of the reasons we knew it wasn't flu last year, is because there's very rarely a peak of flu in April. So your danger area, your thick part of the histogram is going to be January, February, but maybe December. So we don't really know yet. Right now, fingers crossed, it doesn't look, it looks light, but that could easily change. Yeah, and Barbara is in Montana. Montana is just getting slammed. Lucas is asking, the end of the graph doing down also a data artifact because of it clipping it on the being biweekly? No, when I looked at other countries, there wasn't a common clip factor. It's not an artifact of the clipping. Good question though. Rory celebrated traditional Pilgrim Thanksgiving dinner outside while spreading pandemic. That's probably pretty traditional. I mean, outside is not a bad idea. If you have to do something, do it outside as much as you can. I would put a big leaf blower, aim it to people's faces. There's always that one guy who wants to argue politics, put the leaf blower, aim it right at him. Let's see here. Yeah, Mike said a huge construction site, 77% of the people I work around do not properly wear masks. It's really unfortunate. Small plug, we do have probably a bad segue. Are you looking for a mask? We do have the store. I just managed to get the store back up, and we do have masks here. We have a mask that says TLDR up front, herd immunity does not work. We have a mask that is Infamullet 1, Sweden 0 halftime, and we do have a Bonky mask in here too. So you can get, if you need a mask for your coworkers, Mike, tell them to go to the Infamullet and get some Infamullet masks. Get them some Bonky masks on them. But what I wanted to show on this screen more than the merchandise thing is we're partnering with a Facebook page called Science Decoded. This is an individual who is an actual scientist working with COVID-19. He doing a lot of really good work day to day, practically in the lab with this stuff, but also spending time to go onto Facebook and write articles. We've entered into collaboration where I'm posting their articles on the blog, and we've got 3 of them up. Right now, they tend to focus on vaccine issues. So the first one was Moderna joins Pfizer in the fight club of COVID-19. By the way, the only thing I contribute to these articles is occasionally I recommend puns for titles. This one was a pun that I saw. But you can see here in this collaboration, really, and right up top here, this is the link. So if you want to go, click on them, sign up, like the page, share the page for Science Decoded. It's a great site. You'll get lots of updates. We're not doing everything they're posting here because they post a lot, but you can see this is a good amount of information on vaccines. If you want to know about vaccines and what's coming down with COVID, here's a scientist breaking it down for you. And like every time that we do this, all the way at the bottom, we have all our sources, right? So you can follow up and do more get more information and look. This was my contribution. This may be satire where Trump brings in the closer of Mar-a-Lago Bob, but two articles were posted today. One about vaccine. This one, ban little bam, da bang, da bang, diggity diggity, set up, jump the boogie. I'm sorry, I saw that name of that vaccine, and the first thing I thought was Kid Rock. I couldn't get out of my head. So again, that's my only contribution to this article. But it's all about this one of the vaccines. And what's good about this one is it shows these things aren't silver bullets, right? A vaccine is not like the end of a Hollywood movie where we all get around and have a passionate speech, like Independence Day. We shall not go quietly in the night. Boom, here's the vaccine, aliens over, roll credits, done. This vaccine is good, but it has a lot of problems. And Science Decoded did a good job of describing, why is it tricky to administer? Why is it difficult logistics? why does that still mean that it's better than nothing? And then we also posted one today, something minks in the state of Denmark. Never bad to go with a Shakespearean pun, but it's about a culling of minks in Denmark because there may have been a human to animal mutation of COVID-19 that then got transferred back to humans, which would render the COVID vaccines potentially mute. So again, we're doing this collaboration with Science Decoded, and you'll find their websites. You can click on them and go to their Facebook. It's a really great effort that they're doing to check them out. So let me see here, find where, there we go. Let me see if there's any, yeah, more questions. Yeah, throw sanitizer at people. Yeah, so Lucas here has a question about the induced herd immunity new strains connection. Yeah, the concept of induced herd immunity, I don't know if this is what you mean, Lucas, is that for the many reasons why induced herd immunity doesn't work, is that there can be new strains that are, congratulations, you're uninduced, you're reduced, it's reduced immunity. Miss Falconberry wants the Swedish mask. I should get one for my favorite Swedish nationalists who come up on YouTube. By the way, for anyone from Sweden who's visiting now and really angry at me because I mentioned your name and it wasn't in all praise and glory that how great you are, pick up a Sweden mask. It's only halftime. I admit I could be wrong. You could end up right. It's Infomullet 1, Sweden 0 halftime as a mask. Yeah, Lucas is clarifying that Bauman is not a vaccine. It's a therapeutic. Good catch. I'll go ahead and make some edits to make sure that's clear that I didn't inadvertently change that. And so that's the message. The message is, you know, it's the holidays. It's in a pandemic. We're not going to stop the holidays because it's a pandemic, but it doesn't mean we can't be smart about it. Really isolate as much as possible the people you're going to be celebrating with. Look, if it's worth seeing them because this is your big family thing, invest the time to do it right. Protect yourself from exposure heading up to it. Practice safe distancing and masking as much as you can. Look, at the end of the day, having a mask on during Thanksgiving, it may feel a little bit awkward, but it's a lot better than having them at their bedside in an ICU come around Christmas, okay? I'm telling you, I've been in the hospital for this. You don't want to spend the holidays in this hospital. And I was there when they were not overcrowded. They are really at full capacity. So from the Infomullet, this is an unscheduled, quick taste to give a happy holidays, whether you're celebrating or remembrance, if you're celebrating or remembering Day of Mourning tomorrow, which takes on more meanings with this pandemic. But the original meaning is that the, you know, is related to the harm that was done by what we associate with Thanksgiving. Obviously had a harm on the Native Americans. Some people remember it as Day of Mourning. Others remember it as Thanksgiving. However you celebrate it in whatever you form, even if you're doing Festivus, right? Or the flying spaghetti monster, get around the table and party, do it safely. Have a happy holidays, have a safe holidays, and please, 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 this could have been the week that we crest this wave. So if anyone can do something to get a few less affections going, let's do that. I'm a cynical optimist. I don't think we're going to be able to do it. I think we got a bad couple months ahead, but that doesn't mean that the Mulleteer people listening to this have to hit that impact. So be safe as you can. Enjoy your holidays. If you don't hear from me in a bit, we'll do back to regular schedule, but have a good Thanksgiving or Day of Remembrance, whatever you choose to do. Be safe, be well, and everyone take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the Infomullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a Mulleteer and support the Infomullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.